Okay, let's unpack this. Picture this scenario for a second. You're, you're at the absolute peak of your career.
Right.
You've built the company, or maybe you've led a nation through a massive crisis. You are untouchable. You're on the cover of every magazine. And then,
Out of nowhere.
exactly, in the span of just a single afternoon, the music stops.
The ultimate full stop.
A terminal diagnosis.
Yeah.
A message that basically says, get your affairs in order because it's over. But then, and this is where today's deep dive gets wild, you get a reprieve.
Yeah, a literal miracle.
They give 15 more years on the clock. Just hand it to you.
Which honestly sounds like the ultimate lottery win. It sounds like the perfect ending to the story.
You'd think so, right? You'd think it ends with, and he lived gratefully ever after.
Mm-hmm.
But the sources we're looking at today tell a much darker and more complex story.
Much more complex.
It turns out surviving the crisis is actually the easy part. It's surviving the success that follows that breaks you.
And that is the core tension we're unpacking today. We are looking at the life of King Hezekiah. And to get the full picture, we aren't just reading one story. We're triangulating his life using 3 different ancient sources.
Okay.
2 Kings chapter 20, 2 Chronicles chapter 32, and Isaiah chapters 38 and 39.
It's almost like a true crime investigation where you need 3 different witnesses to figure out what actually happened.
Yeah.
Because one witness gives you the facts.
Right.
One gives you the feelings, and the other gives you the fallout.
Precisely. Each source gives us a slightly different angle on the exact same event. So one gives us the medical facts, one gives us the internal monologue, the psychology, really, and one gives us the political consequences.
So our mission for this deep dive is to figure out how a leader who is described as godly, one of the good guys, navigates the massive swing from desperate prayer to sudden arrogant pride.
Yeah.
And the big question we need to answer for you listening is, what does his story teach us about the danger of short-term thinking?
It is a phenomenal case study in the danger of the after, the danger of the post-crisis victory lap.
Well, let's jump right into the crisis itself. Set the scene for us. Where exactly are we in history when this goes down?
So Hezekiah is king of Judah, and he has just withstood this massive existential threat from the Assyrian Empire.
So he's riding high.
Politically, he is on top of the world, and then abruptly, the text in 2 Kings 20 drops the hammer. It just says, in those days, Hezekiah became sick and was at the point of death.
Do the sources actually specify what the sickness was? Because sick unto death is a bit vague.
They do mention a boil or a severe inflammation.
Okay.
And in the ancient world without antibiotics, a staph infection or something similar is a death sentence. It's septic, it's painful, and it moves really fast.
And to make matters worse, he gets a house call. But it's not the kind you want.
Right. The prophet Isaiah walks in. Now, usually you want the prophet to come in and say, God is with you. Hold on, it'll be okay.
The ultimate bedside manner.
Exactly. But Isaiah just says, set your house in order for you shall die and not live.
Wow, that is blunt. There's no, we're going to run some tests or let's wait for the lab work. It's just, you shall die.
It is a decree, and this is really important for you to grasp. In the ancient mindset, when a prophet speaks a decree like that, it is considered as good as done.
It's sealed.
Sealed. The timeline is fixed.
So how does Hezekiah react? Because if I'm him, I'm probably calling my lawyers, looking for a successor, or I'm just in total denial.
He does something incredibly vulnerable. The text says he turned his face to the wall.
To the wall.
Yeah, it signifies turning away from the world. He turns away from his courtiers, his guards, his power, his reputation, everything. He isolates himself with God. It's an act of total desperation, and he just weeps bitterly.
And what is his argument? Like, does he bargain? Does he say, I'll build you a new temple if you let me live?
Not exactly bargaining. He pleads his resume.
His resume.
Yeah, he says, remember now, O Lord, I pray, how I have walked before you in truth and with a loyal heart. He's essentially saying, I've been your guy. I have been faithful. Please don't let it end like this.
Man, that's so relatable. When the chips are down, even a king is just a scared guy asking for more time. And this is where the timeline gets crazy fast, right?
Incredibly fast. This is the first key insight on the nature of grace from our sources. Isaiah hasn't even made it out of the middle court of the palace before God tells him to turn right around.
So it's instantaneous.
The text emphasizes the speed to show us that this isn't about a medical recovery process. This is the sovereignty of grace. God decides to reverse his own decree in response to a prayer.
Define that for us, sovereignty of grace. It sounds like a heavy theological term, but what does it mean practically here?
It means God reserves the right to change the script. The decree you shall die was the natural consequence of his illness and the trajectory he was on.
Right.
But prayer moved the needle. Sovereignty means God is the boss of the timeline. and he grants Hezekiah 15 more years.
15 years. That's a very specific number. Why 15?
It's a complete life extension. It's enough time to raise a son, to secure a legacy. It's a massive gift. It's a lifetime of bonus rounds, as you put it earlier.
So the boil is treated, they actually use a poultice of figs, which is an interesting little detail the source includes, and he recovers. If the movie ended right here, it's a blockbuster. The king who prayed and lived.
But the sources don't let us stop there. We have to look at what happens inside Hezekiah's head once the fever breaks, because that is where the real danger lies.
Which brings us to the second segment, gratitude versus pride. We have two very different accounts of the aftermath here. Let's start with the good news in Isaiah chapter 38.
This is unique to the book of Isaiah. It records a poem, a writing of Hezekiah. It's essentially his personal journal entry right after he survives.
I was reading through this in prep, and it is heavy stuff. He talks about feeling like a weaver who has his life cut from the loom.
Yeah.
That image really stuck with me.
It's a powerful metaphor. A weaver spends months creating a tapestry and then snip.
Yeah.
It's gone. He says, like a shepherd's tent, my life is pulled up. He's grappling with how fragile he felt in that bed. And then the tone shifts to this explosive gratitude.
He says, "You have loved my soul from the pit of corruption."
And he makes a promise, too. He says, the living man, he shall praise you as I do this day.
He's basically saying, I get it now. Life is a gift. I'm going to spend every single bonus day praising you.
It is the peak of spiritual clarity. You know that feeling when you have a near miss in a car and for about an hour, you are the absolute most careful driver on the road?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You turn the radio down.
Wow.
You drive exactly the speed limit. You promise to never text and drive again. You're just hyper aware of being alive.
That is Hezekiah in Isaiah 38.
But then
we have to open 2 Chronicles chapter 32, and this is where the deep dive gets uncomfortable.
because the timeline moves forward.
Yeah.
The adrenaline wears off. The safe driver starts speeding again. What does Chronicles say?
It gives us a brutal assessment. It's verse 25, but Hezekiah did not make return according to the benefit done to him.
Did not make return. That phrasing makes it sound like he defaulted on a loan.
In a spiritual sense, he did. The text diagnoses the problem instantly. It says, for his heart was lifted up.
The lifted up heart. So we're talking about pride.
Pride. But specifically the pride of the survivor. The source material invites us to really look at this transition. How do you go from, God saved me from the pit, to, I'm the great King Hezekiah so fast?
I guess it's the danger of recovery. When you're sick, you're dependent. When you're healthy, well, you start thinking you're invincible again.
Exactly. We often fail the test of prosperity right after passing the test of adversity. In the hospital bed, Hezekiah was humble, back on the throne with his robes on, feeling strong.
Yeah, he started to believe his own press.
He started to think, maybe I was saved because I'm special. Maybe I earned this.
And this isn't just an internal attitude adjustment. This pride actually manifests in a specific disastrous decision. This leads us to the envoys from Babylon.
Yes. This is the pivotal moment where the internal attitude becomes external policy.
So set the stage politically for us. Who is Babylon at this point? Because later in the Bible, Babylon is the ultimate villain. Are they the bad guys yet?
Crucial context here. At this specific moment, Babylon is not the superpower yet. Assyria is the big bad wolf that everyone is terrified of. Babylon is an up-and-coming state. They are a potential ally against Assyria. They hear Hezekiah was sick and recovered, so they send envoys with a letter and a gift.
It's a diplomatic mission, a get-well-soon basket from a foreign dignitary.
On the surface, yes, but it's also a scouting mission. They are checking out Hezekiah's strength. They want to know if he's a worthy military partner.
And Hezekiah, well, he gets excited. The text says he was glad of them.
He was flattered. Here are these dignitaries from a rising Eastern power traveling for months just to see him. And because his heart is lifted up, what does he do?
He opens the doors. He shows them everything, the silver, the gold, the spices, the armory. The source literally says there was nothing in his house or in all his dominion that Hezekiah did not show them.
Think about the psychology there. Why is he doing that?
Well, connecting it back to the pride you mentioned, he's flexing. He's showing off. Look how rich I am. Look at my weapons.
Precisely. But here's the catch. Theologically, he didn't show them the God who healed him. He didn't take them to the temple to say, let me tell you about the absolute miracle that just happened in my bedroom.
Right.
He showed them his stuff. He took credit for the glory.
Now let me play devil's advocate for a second. Why is this bad strategically? Isn't this just standard deterrence? Like, look how much money and weapons I have. Don't mess with me.
That's probably exactly how Hezekiah justified it. I'm building an alliance. I'm showing value. But the text condemns it for two reasons. First, the theological arrogance we just mentioned. But second, geopolitically, it was incredibly naive.
Yeah.
You don't show a potential rival exactly where you keep the safe key.
You basically gave them the inventory list for a future robbery.
He did. He showed them exactly what was worth stealing. And that's not just hindsight speaking either. The prophet Isaiah sees this immediately and calls him out.
This is the confrontation in 2 Kings 20.
Yeah.
Isaiah asks, what did these men see? And Hezekiah is surprisingly honest. She just says they saw everything.
And Isaiah drops a prophecy that is absolutely chilling. He says, the days are coming when all that is in your house shall be carried to Babylon. Nothing shall be left.
So the very people he tried to impress are the ones who are going to strip him bare.
And it gets more personal than that. Isaiah adds, and they shall take away some of your sons who will descend from you, and they shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon.
I want to pause on that word eunuchs. We hear it in ancient texts,
Right.
but let's be crystal clear for the listener. This isn't just a fancy job title.
No. It means castration. It means forced servitude. It means his own biological descendants will be completely stripped of their identity, their ability to have families, and their future. They will be servants in the enemy's house. It is the end of his line.
That is a horrific image. Any parent hearing that their kids are going to be enslaved and mutilated because of their mistake would just fall apart. You'd expect Hezekiah to drop to his knees again, turn to the wall, and beg God to change the plan just like he did for his own life.
You'd expect that. We saw he knows how to do it. He has the track record for intercessory prayer.
But he doesn't. And this leads us to the most controversial part of this entire deep dive. The peace in my days controversy.
This is the verse that scholars and readers have struggled with for centuries. It is the major stumbling block of Hezekiah's legacy.
Read the response for us. What does he say to Isaiah after hearing his sons are doomed?
He says, the word of the Lord which you have spoken is good.
Good. He calls the enslavement of his kids good.
And then the text gives us his internal reasoning, just so we don't miss it. For he said, will there not be peace and truth, at least in my days?
Wow, I mean, that sounds borderline sociopathic. Well, it sucks for them, but at least I'll be dead by then.
It is extremely difficult to digest. Some commentators really try to soften it. They say, oh, he's just submitting to God's will. He's being pious. He's accepting the judgment.
Right.
But the source material questions that interpretation seriously.
I feel like pious is a cop-out. It feels like relief. He's just relieved he doesn't have to deal with another war.
It is relief, and that is the absolute tragedy of it. It exposes a deep flaw in his leadership. He is relieved that the disaster won't happen on his watch. It's the ultimate, not in my term of office mentality.
It's interesting to contrast this with other leaders in the sources. You mentioned Moses earlier in our prep. How does Moses handle a similar threat?
Contrast is really the best way to see this clearly. When God threatened to destroy Israel and start over with Moses, Moses said no. Blot me out of your book instead. He was willing to sacrifice his own eternity, his own legacy, for the future of the people.
And here Hezekiah is willing to sacrifice the future of the people for his own comfortable retirement.
Precisely. He lacks intergenerational empathy. The pride that lifted his heart up made him incredibly short-sighted. He became hyper-focused on his own timeline, his own 15 years.
It's almost like the miracle backfired. He fought so hard for those extra 15 years that he became obsessed with enjoying them regardless of the cost of the future.
That is a profound insight. The bonus rounds became a cage. He stopped planting trees for the future and started just eating the fruit. He became a consumer of his own legacy rather than a builder of it.
So we have this massive arc. Illness, miracle, gratitude, and then it curdles into pride, showing off, and finally this kind of selfish resignation.
It's a tragic decline.
Mm-hmm.
And notice the source in Chronicles mentions a detail. It says, Hezekiah eventually humbled himself for the pride of his heart, so the wrath of the Lord did not come in the days of Hezekiah.
So he did repent.
He did, partially. He humbled himself enough to dodge the bullet personally. But the consequences were not canceled. They were just delayed.
Wow.
The train was still coming. It just wasn't going to hit his car. It was going to hit his children's car.
This brings us to the application. Because, look, most of us listening aren't kings of Judah, and we aren't negotiating with Babylon. But this dynamic, this peace in my days trap, feels very modern.
It is incredibly relevant. The source material is asking us to consider how should a leader balance present blessing with long-term consequences.
It's the classic tension in business, in politics, even in parenting. It is so easy to make a decision that makes this quarter look good.
Exactly. You can boost profits today by cutting R&D for tomorrow. You can have peace in your days by ignoring a structural problem in your organization, knowing the guy who takes over after you will have to deal with the explosion.
Or in parenting. You can just give the kid the iPad to get peace in your days right now, to get some quiet, even if it messes up their attention span later.
That's it. That is the Hezekiah trap. Hezekiah chose immediate peace over future security. True leadership and spiritual maturity requires the exact opposite. It requires planting trees under whose shade you do not expect to sit.
I really love that phrase. But it's hard to do. It's hard to genuinely care about a future you won't see.
It is, but that is the ultimate test of character. The source asks you, as the listener, to look at your own heirs, whether that's your biological kids or the junior employees you're mentoring, or just the next generation of your community.
The question is, are you consuming the resources they will need?
Are you building a legacy, or are you just building a comfortable retirement? Hezekiah was a godly leader. He did so many good things. He reformed the temple, he built the water tunnels.
Right.
But in the end, his vision shrank down to the size of his own coffin.
Will there not be peace and truth, at least in my days? That phrase is going to haunt me, honestly. It's so honest, but so dangerous.
It is the trap of the now. It's the assumption that if things are good for me, they are good, period. The lesson from Hezekiah is that we need to look further down the road. We have to care about what happens when the 15 years are up.
And we have to watch out for that moment of success, too, because that seems to be the real trigger here.
Absolutely. The moment you think you've won, the moment you feel invincible, that is when you are most likely to open the treasure house and give away the farm.
So if you've just had a big win or a big recovery, watch out.
Watch out. Stay humble. Don't let your heart be lifted up. Remember that the grace you received was a gift, not a paycheck.
This has been a heavy one today, but I think a really necessary one. We usually like our history and our stories to be neat and tidy, but Hezekiah is messy.
He is a mirror. He shows us that you can have great faith and great flaws in the exact same package. He shows us that starting well does not guarantee finishing well.
So let's wrap this up. We saw the crisis and the sovereignty of grace. God answering a desperate prayer instantly. We saw the gratitude that morphed into pride. We saw the naive show and tell with Babylon. And we saw the controversial peace in my days.
A roadmap of what not to do in the second half of life.
Here is a final thought for you to chew on as you go about your day. And I really want you to be honest with yourself about this.
If you knew with absolute certainty that your current success, your current comfort, or your lifestyle would cost the next generation their security, would you still call your outcome good?
And in your own life right now, are you building a legacy that survives you, or are you just building a comfort that expires when you do?
The choice is yours.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll catch you next time.